I have written down in my journal a few points about that I want to follow myself and keep in mind on a regular basis, just to create a successful life story for myself personally. And this video should just be about sharing these points with you. Keep in mind they will probably change into the future. They are just a suggestion for you to contemplate and maybe to tweak around and then integrate in your own daily habit and into your own routine. And so the first thing I want to give you as an example of why you should actually have a routine and you should implement habits, and why even if you are into this spiritual development and you meditate and you want to become enlightened, why it's still important to keep an eye on your, so to speak, physical life, where you are developing skills and where you are interacting with other people and the world, and you try to develop your persona, you develop yourself. Whereas in meditation you try to see the truth, try to see through that self to what you actually are, beyond all these concepts which you call yourself, and the self-referential web of beliefs that kind of together is what you are. That's the one side of personal growth, and it's very important to get these deep insights into what reality is and how you relate to it, and basically what's your purpose in it, or what's your role in this overall scheme of life. But then there's the other side of developing this self and nurturing it, because even though some people talk about killing the ego and just eradicating it and ego is bad and everything, there's also this aspect that we need it. You cannot get rid of it. You can only develop personally and also spiritually through that ego. It will never go away. You have to work with it because it's very, very adaptable. It will try to hijack your spiritual insights and make it a belief system again, which it can incorporate into the self structure. And you really have to develop a deep understanding of these processes and a good insight into how these structures of self work, so that you can work with it instead of it still guiding your spiritual processes and using it to just enhance the ego. You have to enhance your ego from a deliberate standpoint and in a deliberate way. And so the way you can see yourself, and maybe you have noticed this before, is you are your boss and your own employee. You're both at the same time for yourself. So, and if you have noticed that usually when we are kind of unconsciously going through our life, we are the worst boss and the worst employee at the same time as well. Because we are giving ourselves strict ideas and strict rules we want to apply and we have to do, and we give ourselves a lot of criticism and a lot of work to do and high ambitions. But then on the other side, we are also a bad employee because we are never really living up to those goals we give ourselves, or we dream about and we fantasize about. So there's on the one hand side, we are very strict with ourselves, probably more rude to ourselves than we would be with anyone else. And then on the other side, we are also worse than we would be to our boss in real life. We are not doing the work he's telling us, so to speak. And so if you see yourself coming from that standpoint, and maybe it's better for you, but it certainly is for me that way, then it gives you a perspective of what we should actually achieve with personal development. And the thing is, we have to see personal development as a continuous step-by-step process where we are incrementally improving ourselves, and we are not just putting all the pressure on us to achieve it by tomorrow and be that person. We constantly want to have kind of a tension between what we are today and where we want to be, because without that we won't have we won't feel a need to change anything. Because when we are deeply absorbed in meditation or very present in the moment, it might all feel just very natural and very calm and very perfect, and existing is just everything we need, and being, just resting in this being, it can be so wonderful, and you can achieve this presence in your life after years of meditation, which then you might feel there's no need to develop at all, but constantly keeping that tension between your ideal, which you imagine, and then where you are today will keep you growing. And so when we think back to that analogy to the boss and the employee, we can also think about the process as a negotiation process for continuous improvement. So as you would do in real life with your boss, when he first hires you, he knows you don't really know your stuff, so he gives you incremental process where you can learn new skills on a regular basis and improve and become a better employee. That's what we want to do with ourselves. We know a lot of stuff, but we are bad at implementing it. So we want to match those two and constantly keep learning and keep improving. So we raise the bar and raise ourselves up at the same time. And for that, we need to develop a profound routine. So it's always better to have a plan and to go somewhere instead of just aimlessly going through life without ever really knowing what it is actually for that you are doing right now. And so we should work on improving our routine over time as well. It's not just you can develop this perfect routine and then you will just execute it every day. Developing a routine is also a process. You test out different things, you switch around the times of when you do what, and so you see yourself developing through that tool and developing that tool at the same time. And so I just encourage you to have a routine. I mean, I've talked about many things in other videos in the past, what's worthwhile to implement, and then tweak around the times, the different styles, and see what works for you. Write it down, set up your schedule maybe on your phone to have work set up at different times, when you exercise, when you meditate, and so you really get into a rhythm. And then I also really recommend you get up at the same time every day, or really almost the same time, because it will give you a lot more energy, because the circadian rhythm can really quickly get out of whack or out of line, because when you party on the weekends and you sleep in very late or you sleep very little, it really impacts you for several days. So even on the weekends, try to get up at the same time. If you haven't had enough time to sleep, maybe only for a few hours, then naps throughout the day, that's better than just sleeping until midday and then your whole day is already like kind of over. And something I really have found a lot of value in for my personal daily habits and for my personal well-being, is to remind myself every evening of a few things that I'm thankful for from the day. So sometimes I journal, not every day, but usually when I lie in bed, I have this habit of reminding myself of 3 things that I'm thankful for and really feeling them again in a positive way, because what that does is kind of counteracts our negativity bias, where we only see the bad things, or not only, but we usually overvalue the bad things. And if we don't have this habit of reminding ourselves of the positive things, then I have found myself to be just thinking about what went wrong during this day. Maybe there was some instance at work when I discussed something with other people and it made me or the other one feel awkward, or something didn't went well. And this is just something that most people do when they fall asleep. They think about all these bad things, and then, yeah, just imagine you go to bed with those thoughts in mind. That will over time really shape your worldview. So try to shift that in a more positive direction with this habit of reminding yourself of at least 3 positive things that you're thankful for in your day. And then your routine. This is maybe something that's only important for me and maybe not so important for others, depending on how extroverted or introverted you are. But I have to set a certain amount of time and schedule also time where I care for my friends and relationships that I don't see like on a regular daily basis or weekly basis, like with some other activities. Because then usually in today's time, when we live further away from other friends that we don't see every day, we can quickly lose contact. And so I like to schedule some time and make phone calls with them, or just also schedule time where I visit them, just to keep relationships that I really find worthwhile, to keep them alive. So this was the part on your routine. I mean, this is not a complete list. This is just what I'm working on myself on right now. Maybe you can get some suggestions. And the next thing to create like a profound life that you find successful and you are happy with, I have found, is to be to live your life through the version that you want to become. And this is something a little bit I don't know, spiritual, or what, I cannot think of the word right now, but woo, some people think that you can just think and wish things into existence, but this is not how it works here. It's just it's basically just a reminder for yourself of where you want to go, because you might have ambitions one day and goals one day, but don't think that goals are something that exists out there in the world. They are something, they are a part of your psychology, and they are like a wish that has to be kept alive. It has to be nurtured and has to be fueled by something, and you have to remind yourself constantly of where you want to go. So part of this is to visualize kind of, or almost on a daily basis, where you want to go, and the goals you want to achieve. And then acting from that mindset where you think you would be in when you have achieved those goals. Because you have to see that when you want to really develop yourself and change yourself into someone else, then this doesn't happen by just thinking about it, because it's what you are. If you just stay the way you are, you will never change into the person that you want to be. And to develop these character traits or whatever skills you want to learn is to actually practice them now, and not at some point in the future. That's something I guess many people forget about. You really have to be that person already that you want to become, or what that will end up looking like is trying to be that person you want to be, and failing along the way and improving over time, of course. And then your journey for personal development, you have to let it be guided by this vision of where you want to be. And this will change over time, so don't expect that what you think you want to become today will be the same tomorrow and in a year, or maybe even in 5 or 10 years. It will certainly change, and that's good, because as I talked about in the beginning, you always want to set the bar a little bit higher than where you are, and then raise them up both at the same time. So your vision will always change so that it stays challenging to you, and you keep improving, and you keep this vision you keep your vision being a vision, and therefore it has to develop as you develop. The next point I want to talk about is happiness, and never to forget in this process that freedom and happiness is something we find mainly restricted by our own concepts. In Buddhism, they teach that you have to, in order to become free, you have to let go of your attachments. And usually we, in the West, we understand this as attachments to materialistic possessions or to a career or to something external. But that's only the start. Even more important is to let go of the attachments of your conceptual attachments. And this means letting go of your current now self. Because remember, the concepts that you hold as true, they are yourself. Yourself is kind of a self-referential conceptual web. And if you want to develop yourself, you have to let go the attachments that you have now, which are yourself, your current self. And if you're not happy with that arrangement of concepts and want to change it into some other arrangement of concepts, you have to let go of these attachments conceptually. They're not something that exists out there in the world. So you see many of these spiritual people and also many YouTubers, they are talking about spirituality. I don't know if I'm correct about this. I may be wrong. It may just seem the way they present themselves, but they are very attached to their spiritual ego, so to speak. They have some attachment to the knowledge they gathered, the way they present themselves. And of course, it is difficult not to do that because you're always expressing yourself also in front of a camera. And as I'm doing it right now, but sometimes you can just feel that these persons have a lot of attachment still on a conceptual level. They may have seen through the illusory attachments and illusory things we strive for in the world, but not through the much harder to release attachments of concept. And then another point I'm currently really trying to embrace is to seek out my errors. And these are kind of like blind spots. So you have to talk to other people around you and sometimes ask them, hey, what can I improve on? What do you think are my weak points? And what do you really hate about me, if you can't stand something like this? But then also try to confront your errors in a way that they don't crush you. And because what can happen then is that you feel so afraid to go there and work on it that you just reside and you go back to a lower version of yourself, a version that feels safer to you, and you have too much anxiety to go beyond these areas where you feel you have to grow and develop and change these things about you. So be very mindful that this is a step-by-step process as well. You can go too quickly and you don't want to do that. You want to challenge yourself just in the right way. And this might look very different for anyone, so this is not, there are no general recommendations, but yeah, that's how I have seen it. And the last thing is, when you feel that something is, some area you have fears and you are fearful about, this is actually how your brain or your mind tells you what the borders of your comfort zone are. It's not that this comfort zone is just, it's so often talked about that you can just leave your comfort zone or leave your comfort zone. But why do people rarely do it? Because our body tells us where the edges are through our feelings, usually fear. And this fear is our conceptual self telling us, oh, there might be some danger behind that thing, whatever it is. And of course, be intelligent about this. Don't do anything really physically dangerous. And also, there might be some mental dangers if you are into things like psychedelics or something. If you want to, you always want to be careful about exploring these new realms and really honor this message your body sends you, that there is, if you feel fear, there is, you have reached kind of the edge of your comfort zone. But then think about it intelligently. Can you go beyond it and grow in that area and leave that fear behind and discover just some misbeliefs that are the basis of this fear? And usually that is the case when we think about anything that's really conceptual. There is no real danger behind it. It's just some social anxiety we have, or some there's some property in these concepts that serves the purpose of keeping our conceptual self alive. So if you go beyond that, you might just be a really good step closer to discovering actually the true self, which is the no self, or the illusory nature of this whole conceptual self. And yeah, that was the last point of my list that I'm working on right now for personal development, and to really think about on a daily basis, to integrate and to seek out the opportunities for growth. I hope you could take something away about this. Sorry that this video was a little bit longer. I have also written down this list as notes, and you can find the article in the description down below. Please let me know what you think, and with that said, see you in the next video.